Okay, y'all, how are you guys doing today, y'all? I'm really glad to be here. So, this talk is about CivicHacking.JS, pretty much helping your community with JavaScript, or how I was exposed and eventually used JavaScript and learned a lot of things about different frameworks doing civic hacking throughout Texas. But first, who am I? Really? What do you know about me? So I graduated from Notre Dame with a degree in environmental science. And from there, I was an environmental scientist in oil and gas, got laid off. And I've had a come to like Jesus moment. And I was like, what am I good at? And I was like, coding and fencing. So I actually ended up becoming a fencing coach at a brand new club, and also I was their in-house developer, and I freelanced for 3 years while trying to find my full-time gig back in Houston. Along the way, every 6 months, I would do something very drastic to try to get a tech job. And one of the things I ended up doing was like becoming a tech organizer a little bit. But another thing I did before I decided speaking was a thing was actually got involved in civic hacking, so. But now I'm an associate scientist in training at Crimson Vista doing cybersecurity, so in Baltimore. So I just started back in like April, so it's really brand new. Thank you. So what is civic hacking really? This is the definition that OpenGov data.io gives, but really, civic hacking is just about people that are fed up about how slow government is moving, but the community has needs today, and just a group of people are just very, very angry at government slow processes, and they're just like, let's get shit done today, instead of like, for like, no, like February 2000 and like whatever, so. But who are civic hackers? Other than these people being angry, civic hackers can be anyone in the community. It actually can be you. It could be you and the man in the mirror, but you know, that is a Michael Jackson joke and I'm kind of off topic. Because this is supposed to be a dash of Prince talk. But pretty much, anyone that has like any needs and any technical skill can join. It's inclusive. But really, why did I get involved in this? I'm like, there's me and the mayor in my Prince pajamas. Somehow that happened. But like, really, I'm a nice person and I like doing good things. So that was like number one off the checklist. But really the big problem was I had hackathon burnout. So pretty much I was doing all these hackathons and building apps that would never see the light of day after that like weekend. It would just end up going into the graveyard of GitHub with, you know, all the other to-do apps. But I actually was thinking to myself, instead of building like a fun app that will never see the light of day, what if I had spent that time building an app that would actually help somebody and like make a difference in somebody's life? So I wanted my work to be a little bit more meaningful. So open data is great. I don't know about you, but how many of you guys have like done web scraping for fun? I saw hands go up and then down at one point. I'm like, but I don't know, like web scraping like a government website is kind of different because I'm supposed to be like a wet hacker, and I don't want to find out the hard way that orange isn't my color. So open data is great and all, but what if we actually built apps to be open source? I know there's a lot of frameworks that are open source that give us tools, but already the big problem is cities across the nation have similar problems. It would be great, instead of like starting out from scratch, you can just go to somebody else's repo and see what they did, and they would be like, hey, take our work and like improve it to your own circumstances, right? Another thing is, what I found out is civic hacking communities are diverse naturally. So pretty much back in Houston, the scene over there pretty much is the demographics of Houston. So, but in other communities like Austin, you have other, like, there's an asterisk to this because, like, in Austin, there's problems there. There's gerrymandering and also, you know, other things that have been going on to push out certain demographics. And you see that when you actually go to those meetings because, like, no one is going to drive 50 miles just to do civic hacking, except me. But that's another thing. So I ended up going I drove down to Austin with a friend, and I went down to do a hackathon yet again. I couldn't escape them. And did the Hack for Change, and pretty much what I found there was a project using React. So Budget Party was that was a app built on React to help people understand the budget and get voters excited about what's going on with the budget and why should we like be concerned and actually look at it. So I was really excited to get in there. So another thing about civic hacking is JavaScript has a wide plethora of different frameworks and tools, and you could just decide to use anything you want, and no one's going to judge you for it. So, and you get to play with different tools that you haven't get to play with, or play with tools that you would play with at work, but you're afraid to like mess around with them at work because you're going to shut everything down and make everything implode and get fired. So I ended up learning about React at the time because I was an Angular 1 person at the time. So I just wanted to like learn about React, and I was able to because due to mentorship. So one of the things that our community sometimes stumbles on is mentorship outside jobs, because like I know our industry really wants people that are like senior roles, but like they came from somewhere. People don't sprout out and become like senior developers with 8 years experience in React out of nowhere. Unlike how like the dev openings say, you know. But what I really liked about this was someone took the time out to help me understand React. And it became like a cycle. So when I ended up going back home, I was teaching my other friends React and other frameworks. So it was just like a good like circle of life kind of thing. Another thing I found out at this hackathon was developers really do not like WordPress. So at the time, what was going on was there was this one project that was using WordPress, and they were all designers, and they wanted a feature built. And there was out of like 100 developers, no one would come and help them. And I felt sad for them, and being a nice person, I went to help them. And what I figured out was they had no documentation on what the person before did. So I wasn't really able to help them, but I figured out how important documentation was that day. But at this point, I realized I was missing my keys. My friend had my keys, and I was freaking out because I didn't want to walk all the way back from Houston to Austin, like from Austin, you know? Seattle and Portland is the same distance between Austin and Houston. For some of you guys that don't realize how big Texas is in general. So I went over to his room and figured out why hasn't he given back my keys. So I found out that his team was having a breakdown. They were pretty much siloed off into their roles and weren't communicating with each other. It was pretty late on to like the hackathon. It was like pretty much like 6 p.m. at the first day. And for hackathon terms, if you don't have anything by then, that's pretty bad sign. So I decided to help them out. I ended up building something for them. I ended up like doing a little like sitemap for them and just a little sketch to know that what they can plan on. And I wasn't really planning on doing this, but I didn't really plan on doing this, but like they just needed direction and to get something done. But I wasn't really expecting like what my work was, like have a name and actually have a role defined to it. So, but because like at that time I was just a freelancer, minding my own business, just getting websites built. But I didn't know that there was a whole section of our industry actually made for people to tell these people what to do. So it was really important to like think about your coworkers that you have back home, that their work is as significant as well. So, and civic hacking is pretty much about seeing a need and then filling that need, no matter what your role is at work, pretty much. So I went back to my little React group for budget party, and I don't know about you guys, but bugs are like cockroaches. Like, I don't know if you've seen the cockroaches back in Texas, but they fly, and it's pretty similar to like at work, like, and when you see one of these roaches, somebody is screaming. It's usually a manager. And they don't stop screaming until like the bug is fixed and squashed. So like I took my experience with like squashing cockroaches to fixing bugs in React, and I actually ended up building a little bit more confidence. Like instead of being afraid of roaches and bugs, I was like, hey, I can actually do this. And it just built up my confidence with each one that I smushed and smashed along. So. Unfortunately, I was the only person in my group that was based in Houston, so I had to go back home, but I continued being part of their program and helped out. So, but it was lonely. But we actually had success. That app ended up going on to win the Mozilla Internet Health Prize, and one of my friends ended up from the group going to England. So I came back to Houston, and then we had our own city hackathon. Pretty much a day before the hackathon, we found out Houston had a pot of money just for housing that wasn't being used. And pretty much there was this rebranding of Section 8 housing being called Housing Choice. And pretty much we came up with a plan, like about 16 to 20 of us actually came up with a plan for homelessness in the vacant housing problem because of the oil and gas slump, and we tried to figure it out. We can build an app for this, and we did. We used HTML and CSS, and of course JavaScript. JavaScript that just hugs, the parent, whatever. But because that's pretty much what everyone knew, we didn't know, there wasn't a collective of people knowing just one framework, and we didn't want anyone to be left behind, so we kept it vanilla. We ended up building this super automation of an app, trying to do several things, and we didn't win the hackathon, but the mayor called us aside and was like, hey, you're doing something about this. Keep on doing this. I give you permission to bug people. They're actually going to use this app. So we ended up back to the drawing board, and we actually wanted to go ahead and interview these people so we could actually build an app that would suit their needs. So we had a new plan in place. Our group considerably shrank down to 5 people, and I was like, I have a game plan. I'm going to build this out in React because I learned it, and then I'm going to use WordPress API to actually bring in the data from the old databases of government, and then I'm going to use Meteor.js in the background. And I moved on, right? Thinking this was going to be done, it's going to be great, but then this happened. I found out very quickly, 9 out of 10 times, government officials will not meet with you. They are very, very busy people. In this sense, it was caseworkers. They were overloaded, and kind of had to bribe them with lunch. Shh. But to make them actually show up. But they did once or twice, but it wasn't enough to actually flesh out this app because we wanted this to be an app for them. And we found out, like, Houston is big, y'all. We ended up driving like 30 to 40 miles into town each time, and that actually is a substantial gas bill after you do it a couple of times. So we decided we're gonna find a way to sponsor ourselves, and we're like, let's do grant money, but that also is a long process. That first you have to find the right grant for you, and then you have to wait until they decide and read all the proposals, and then you might not even get it. But this was fine. We thought we could wait, but it got to the point that we just, like, we don't have, like, we had all the energy, but if the world doesn't want to work for your change right now, there's nothing you can do to push it along. So, and we found out housing, like insurance, is a very hard thing to improve. But this was fun because this happened. So this is my neighborhood. So pretty much you have the Palace Inn picture. So what had happened was Palace Inn was like the original flooding from Harvey. And then you have the armed guard over there saying, hey, you have to evacuate because we're going to release the dam. And then they released the dam up on top. So all this took over a week period. But I was already in the Slack group for our civic hacking groups, Sketch City. So we all congregated there, and then people from outside of Houston also integrated in there, giving us, like, Slack had to give us free tier at the time. And pretty much we ended up building out like around like 20 to 30 good apps, like the big one being Harvey Needs. And then we had like other ones for SMS text using Twillo, and Twillo gave us free tier, thank God. Also Muckrack, and just a lot of like maps and shelter and just telling people like where to go to get goods and needs and whatnot. Hence the title Harvey Needs. And I know that we don't really think about this much, but like low spec machines matter. So when we're working in these groups, like some of these people are working from like their teams at work, and they have like various ways they build things, like things that actually you have to go and use, things that you have to use sources, like applications that actually use like 16 gig of RAM to get in. So you get to the point that you start up and you're only able to clone the repo, and then you're not able to do anything else. And then you're not actually able to like go to localhost, which is really not exciting. So it's really heartbreaking as a developer for someone to tell you that your machine is a barrier to entry. But what's really heartbreaking is that you end up building like a desktop app, and no one can use this desktop app because your users don't have desktops, they only have phones. And no one can go to the library because your library is flooded, so no one can use your desktop app. So setting up development environments can be a lengthy process. Like we have so many like spin ups and CIs that just help us like develop quicker. I don't know, do people actually like playing with Webpack and setting things up? I'm like, because that could take a couple of hours, honestly. So we ended up using things like CRA, CMS is like WordPress. Even though people don't like WordPress, they saw like they needed to get things up quickly, so they used it. So another thing we found out really easily was pair programming was very useful, especially when you lost your laptop in the flood and you still wanted to code. So you got to like hang out with your friend, use their laptop, and also still be able to contribute, right? But then also, coding blind is very hard, especially when you're trying to like, some people are just like putting in HTML tags and like sending it over Slack, and just like they're not part of they can't stand up their own development repo. So they're trying to contribute, but you can't really see like as front-end people, you can't really see what's going on, and you just have to like hope that your code makes it look right and have the faith that somebody else will correct your mistakes. And talking about mistakes, it's okay to fail in this circumstances because you're not getting paid for the work you're doing. So, and your job is not on the line. It's just millions of others, but like they weren't going to get anything done in the first place. So it's like, it's a safe place to fail. So, and no one's going to blame you. They're going to be like, damn, I really wish during this hurricane, this developer got this thing right. I'm like, no, it's more like, hey, I hate you, Mother Nature. My home is gone. But it wasn't just only coding. So we pretty much had an environmental crisis at our hands. So like my background in environmental science helped out, especially when it came to like water quality and then finding out that everything was contaminated. So, but then again, Hurricane Irma happened, and we really weren't expecting that to happen, like really. Like, we're like, oh, this is almost gone, we can go back to normal, but then this happened, and pretty much we ended up going to a different Slack group. And in that Slack group, it was pretty much the Irma response group. So pretty much the people from Houston, we migrated over to that Slack group, and we were like, hey, here's all the apps we built. All you need to do is change the branding and like the URL, and here you go, right? So we helped them, like we didn't build the same thing twice, but there were some innovations that happened on, like they learned from our mistakes. They had a chat box. So pretty much a chat box was an easy way for people that were fleeing their homes to like actually use their phones and get in touch with simple messages to like guide them on the right path. So, however, unlike the team back in Houston that all knew each other, the Florida team was people that really didn't hang out together, so they didn't really know each other, and they were all in different cities, and they didn't have like one big central big city that all of them met each other, so they didn't really know each other, and it was just like a circle of like trust not being there. So let's do a little trust exercise. So, how many people can trust the person that's sitting next to them, their code? Raise your hand. I saw hands go up and down. What is this? It's like wavering. Make a choice. Okay, now, out of the people that still have their hands up, put your hands down if the person that is next to you is a coworker. Okay. Put your hand down if the person next to you is a Twitter celebrity. Okay, so there's only like this group over here. Like, what's your story? So they had a community where they actually learned from each other, similar to Civic Hacking, and thus why they trust each other despite working long hours at work or seeing Twitter feeds of different code geniuses things they've done in the past. So, and also, there was different sources of data, but people couldn't really trust that source of data because they didn't trust that person, causing like a cachet of like an infinite loop they couldn't get out of data trust. So, but then Hurricane Maria happened, and that was different because instead of using a Slack group, we ended up using WhatsApp. And with WhatsApp, there's a limit of how many people can be on that group. So we actually ended up losing people. And we ran out of contact with some people, and we didn't hear from them during, and some of them we didn't hear from them after. So it was a scary time. We were prepared to do the same things, but it was a little bit different. From like some of my group of friends, we ended up doing a Create React Native app, and we actually thought it was a great idea because people actually used their phones first, and it just didn't work out because like FEMA was like, no. Like, no, not on my watch. And I just had to find out there's some things that the government should actually pay attention to and actually they should be in charge of that and they should do that, but it shouldn't always fall down to individuals because there's only so much we can do. But the good thing is, through this, getting to know people in person and joining an open source community, because Civic Hacking is pretty much most as open source as you can, but offline. I was able to get back to open source and also the React community, and also participate in a friendly, what is it called? A holiday party with the React team. That picture is React versus Angular, and I was on the React team, and we gently won against Angular by 1 point. So, but it brings me back to meaningful work. I'm I don't know about you, but there's different apps. Everyone's working on different things at work, but some things are more crucial than others, and then some people are just working on is hot dog. So, but there's a way, if you're working on is hot dog, that is fine. You have to make your money somehow, but you can just, if you want to get involved, you can get involved doing things small and local. You don't have to go far. You don't have to drive around a whole state. Plan A, you can just join your local brigade. Every city has a brigade. The brigades I went to were Open Austin, and my local brigade was Sketch City. And you can find your brigade right here. There's a website for that. So if you want to get involved. But if you don't have time, or if there isn't a brigade, you can start your own, honestly. But there's always plan B. You can convince your workplace. And usually, if you're working in a good place, your workplace will be yeah, we'll go for it. But if you're working for a more, you know where you work for though, really? I don't have to tell you to put yourself out there if it's a place that you know they're not gonna go for this. But that's my little shady thing. You know if you work for evil.com. So pretty much, this has been a tale of pretty much my hacking experience with Civic Hacking in 2017. I'm glad that you guys stayed for the journey. And these are things I learned the hard way, not the easy way. So, and this is it. Thank you guys.